What a cool little crock jug we have today. It's less than 5 inches tall. It says motto jug, and it's got a little motto: if you try me once, you will try me again. It says Detrick Distilling Company, Dayton, Ohio. So let's dive into this story on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. Today's story is about a guy named Jacob Forney Detrick. We're going to read from this source written about him in 1900 for his background story. Jacob was born in Ohio, September 27, 1855, to Benjamin and Catherine. Forney is his mom's maiden name. His dad ran a farm, and he did very well for himself, so when his dad died, the family had a good amount of money to fall back on. Jacob is one of 11 children. Jacob is the third oldest. So he went to school, and then he headed to Missouri for about 5 years, and that's where he bought some farmland and he conducted a cattle ranch. There he doubled his money doing that. Then he headed back home, where he married Ella when he was 31 years old. Now, 2 years prior to getting married, in 1884, he started the Detrick Milling Company. He erected the plant, which cost him about $20,000. Him and his little brother Benjamin were successful at this, and they enlarged the facility. At the time that this was written, it says they handle all kinds of grain, flour, and seeds, and they buy and ship thousands of carloads to over 100 different places, and his sales annually is about $500,000. It says Jacob thoroughly understands every department of the milling process. Here it says he is director and vice president of the Tippecanoe Interurban Telephone Company and is connected with other corporations in the county. The milling company has erected a private telephone line to Troy and has 6 telephones. And that's interesting, being that it's the year 1900 and telephones are still in its infancy. The article continues to praise him, his hard work, and his prosperous career. So, the first time this company blips on the radar is in this roster of companies in 1885, and Detrick is listed as having $20,000 in capital stock. Now remember, he just started the business the year prior, in 1884. Then in the paper, in 1887, about 3 years into the business, their safe had been broken into and about $10 was stolen. Then a fire broke out in 1890, totally destroying the flour mill. It says, with the exception of the engine and the boiler, the mill will prove a total loss. A couple weeks later, the insurance estimates are out. Then a couple more weeks later, it's not likely that the Detrick Milling Company will rebuild their flouring mill, which was recently destroyed by fire. Even though I don't know exactly all the things that happened next, I do know that we did move on, and we are still in business. About 4 years later, after the fire, a little ad in the paper for their business. 1896. Now this is an ad in the American Miller magazine, and it says that June 1st, 1896, J.F. Detrick, who has been acting manager for the Edwards Brothers Millers in Troy, Ohio for the past 5 years, severed his connection with them and has taken the management of this company. That's interesting. Also, in 1896, just some advertisement in the paper for a brand called Washburn's Crosby's Gold Medal Flour. 1897, I guess they're trying to sell their flour blending machines to the flour industry. Later on in 1897, Jacob comes down with symptoms of typhoid fever, but he's okay. We see in 1899, Jacob contemplates the erection of a handsome residence on Main Street. This 1900 census shows that Jacob and his wife have been married for 15 years and they never had children. 1900, Grain and Feed Journal writes, Detrick Milling Company is branching out. The company has started a distillery and has changed its name to Detrick Milling and Distilling Company. And this is what we were looking like about this time. When I Google Maps the address of 163 Hickory Street in Dayton, Ohio, it brings me to this dead end. Now, this street looks like it went further at some point, and I don't see remnants of the plant here, unless maybe those buildings back in the distance might be some remnants, I'm not sure. There was another plant in Tippecanoe, and there is a building that still stands from that plant, and it's that red building. In 1902, this article talks about the whiskey making process at the plant. In 1903, a fine-looking ad with a picture of the bottle, and notice at the bottom there's a free jug with every purchase of 4 quarts or more. So maybe these were promotional sample sizes? 1904, the salary of the Tippecanoe city postmaster increased from $1,700 to $2,100, I'm guessing per year, due to mainly one firm, the Detrick Distilling, who is using the mails for advertisements of its whiskey. 1905, they're still advertising the little jugs. This time they did specify that it's the motto jugs, and only 1 jug per person. 1907, Dayton, Ohio directory shows the distillery, also shows Benjamin still associated with the plant. It says that he lives in Tippecanoe City, and I don't see Jacob in here, and I think he also lives in Tippecanoe as well. The following year, 1908, we see Detrick Pure Food Store, which is a delicatessen. There's a dude named A.M. Wells managing the Detrick Distilling and the food store. In 1908 and 1909, I don't see them offering the jugs in this one. I wonder if they stopped making them. So the first time I saw one advertised was 1903, and by 1908, they're done making them. So I would say maybe 5-ish years that they made those. There's a 1911 certificate here. It's good for 50 cents worth of merchandise. 1912, a little something in the American Miller magazine talking about the milling company in Tippecanoe. Now, I thought maybe the milling company was in Tippecanoe and the distillery was in Dayton, Ohio, but this 2014 source says that the Detrick Distillery was also in Tippecanoe, so I'm kind of confused on how many locations we're actually talking about here. September 1918, the Detrick Milling Company and the Tip, Gain, and Coal Company have consolidated under the name Detrick, Grain, and Mercantile Company. This is interesting. Detrick Distilling Company to surrender license. It says, on Saturday night, the company will surrender their license and go out of business. The distillery at Tippecanoe has already been dismantled, and their well-known brand will be withdrawn from the market. This means permanent retirement of one of the oldest and largest mail-order houses in the country, for the owners have resolutely refused to transfer their name to any successor. It goes on to say that Detrick Grain and Mercantile business will continue to operate. So they're just dropping the whiskey business. 1923, a guy takes some photos of Tippecanoe, and one of them happens to be the home of Jacob Detrick. He writes up an article documenting some of the history of the town. He briefly talks about the distillery, saying that it operated from 1885 to 1917, which we actually learned that it ran from about 1884 to 1918. He mentions Jacob Detrick, proprietor of the Detrick Grain and Mercantile Company, but he's also proprietor of the authorized Ford sales and service station. So he's got a car business too. Whenever people mention him, they always mention how huge his grain elevators were. They must have been something. It says, in recent years, Mr. Detrick sponsored the production of motion pictures to display the ability of the Ford automobile. So even though they mention him, they actually never really mentioned anything about his home or the history of it. In 1925, Jacob's wife dies. It says that she had been an invalid for 19 years. Now, they had been married for 39 years, so that's half their marriage. Her sister had lived with them, and she was most likely her caregiver. 1927, Jacob presents the city a $100,000 YMCA as a gift to the community. Also in 1927, Jacob completes a around-the-world cruise. He's headed out again in January in 1928 to Africa, the Mediterranean, and Egypt to return sometime in May. It seems now with his invalid wife gone, he's able to get out and travel. 1930, he gets married to a lady named Doris, and they continue to tour the world. They apparently are at a hotel at this point in Egypt, and they're staying for an undetermined amount of time. In October 1932, just months after returning from their 16-month honeymoon around the world, Jacob dies at the age of 77. He had been sick for about a year or so. When he came home, it was determined that he needs surgery. He started to feel a little bit better, but then he took a turn for the worse. This article never says what was wrong with him, but I found his death certificate and it says that he had a heart condition and he ended up with an embolism to the brain. This says that Detrick offered the town that $100,000 YMCA, but the municipality could not see its way in maintaining it, and the generous donation was not accepted. He was also involved with the Boy Scouts and was presented with an engraved silver cup in appreciation of his efforts. Just a few weeks later, it's reported in the paper that his new bride shall keep the house in the will until her death, and then it is to be turned over to the Shriners to continue their work with crippled children, something Jacob was involved in. It was his wish that the house be turned into a hospital for crippled children. But if the Antioch Temple does not deem it advisable to turn it into a hospital, then they may sell it and the proceeds are to go into a trust fund. He set up a trust fund for his bride and for his sister-in-law, who took care of his invalid wife. The next year, the sister-in-law is suing the new bride for breach of contract. Then the following year, so 2 years after Jacob dies, Doris, his widow, has filed with the court that she would like to sell the property, saying that the income from the property cannot pay the taxes and maintain the property, and also it's not suitable for crippled children. So the court let her sell it. The property was called Mon Reposo. This 1997 paper recalls the history of the house, saying that it had a full ballroom on the top floor. It had a few owners, and in 1992 it was purchased and turned into the Spring Mead Senior Community Home. It is wonderful to see it in such great shape. It didn't get to be used as a crippled children's hospital, but it is still being used for something useful. So in 2014, almost 100 years after Jacob closed his distillery, a new distillery opened up in Dayton, Ohio, and they wanted to pay homage to the local history, so they named their whiskey after Detrick. They kept the same logo and everything, and I found a number of articles in the paper for them. They seem to be doing pretty well. So my bottle, my toast jug, should I say, is in beautiful, pristine condition. This sucker is heavy, let me tell you. I could have sworn it was over a pound, but I weighed it. It's pretty close. It's a cork top, crock, no marks to date it, but we're thinking it's probably between 1903 to 1908. And I found so many examples of these motto jugs online. There are apparently 12 different motto jugs, and they are all cool and all very charming. So, that is going to do it for this story. I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.